Jeff Goldberg for the Sales Pro Network. Welcome. Let's take a look at the clock. It's February 11th, Friday at 10 a.m. It's a beautiful day here on Long Island. I hope it's great where you are too. As you know, I'm a sales coach and trainer. I work with both individuals and organizations to help them get measurable and sustainable sales increases. And I formed the Sales Pro Network to elevate the profession of sales and to help you make more money. It's a place where you can come and ask questions, get coaching, network with each other, learn, make more money. And every Friday at 10 o'clock, I either do a live training or I bring you someone in a live interview who can add value to the profession of sales. And once again, my friends, today is no exception. It's my pleasure to introduce you to Fred Diamond, the president and co-founder of the Institute for Excellence in Sales. Good morning, Fred.
Jeff, it's so good to see you. I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you.
It's great to see you too, my friend. Fred, could you maybe get, by the way, everybody, if you are here, please do say hello in the comments. If you have not connected your Facebook account to StreamYard, I won't know your name. So if you didn't do that, when you make a comment, please say this is Bob or Jeff or whatever your name is so that we know. If you're watching us on the replay, please put replay in there. And if you have any questions for Fred, please put those in the comments too. Fred has his own podcast and he has to leave early. So this will be a shortened version today, but we're going to pack in a lot for you. I guarantee it. So Fred, could you give us a little bit of like the 2-minute background on what brought you up to this point and what is the Institute of Excellence for Excellence in Sales?
Yeah, it's great. I'm based here in Northern Virginia, right outside of Washington, D.C. I've lived all over the country. I'd worked at places like Apple Computer and Compaq Computer. And I started the Institute for Excellence in Sales in 2011. And the mission of the Institute for Excellence in Sales is to help sales leaders, typically B2B enterprise sales leaders, attract, retain, motivate, and elevate top-tier sales talent. Along the way, we started our Sales Game Changers podcast in 2017. Jeff, we're almost up to episode number 500. We've had about 1 million interactions over the years. And typically I interview two types of people. I interview sales VPs at companies like Amazon, Salesforce, IBM. And then I interview thought leaders and practitioners like you who help those sales leaders be more effective and help their teams be more effective. So basically the Institute for Excellence in Sales, it's a member-based organization. We have members around the world. Typically it's companies like Amazon, Salesforce, IBM, Oracle, Cvent software, Red Hat software. And the goal is to just help them be seen as great places to work and to motivate their people.
It's great stuff. I don't know about any of you in the audience, but when I hear somebody like Fred say, yeah, I interview a lot of VPs of sales, my first thought is, how can I add value in Fred's life so that he introduces me to those VPs? Let's see. Somebody says, two of my favorite peeps. We don't know who you are. It just says Facebook user, but thank you for saying that we're two of your favorite peeps. Good morning, Larry Weiss, the phone guy. Good morning, Jeff. Again, don't know who you are. Good morning. Hello from Valerie Jovi and Barry Heffron. I'm assuming Jovi is the dog. Good morning to everybody, and thank you for being here. So let's jump right in, Fred. So many salespeople believe it's all about the price. I find that constantly. I don't think you think that way, though. Why is that, and what should salespeople be focusing on?
It's interesting. So we do a Sales Game Changer show every single day, and we started doing a show every single day when the pandemic kicked in March 2020. Value comes up pretty much every show. As a matter of fact, this past Wednesday, we devoted a whole episode on value-based selling. It depends on who your customers are, who the people are that you're attracting. But most of the people that we work with are enterprise software, hospitality, big ticket item type sales. And, it's not about price. It's about providing the value. And the most critical thing right now that's interesting, Jeff, is sales has always been about value creation. One thing I like to refer to is Neil Rackham in the classic Spin Selling said that sales is about value creation. And it's even more critical now. It's even more critical right now because everybody who is on the planet has had to deal and still dealing with the personal and family and business effects of the pandemic. So everyone's dealing with unique and interesting challenges, right? So they're not just looking for things, they're looking for, how are you going to help me solve my problem? Because the pandemic has caused all of these issues for us, and not just issues for us, but issues for our customers and our customers' customers. So if someone's just relying on sales for price, then obviously you're in a very, very challenging commodity marketplace. But even still, you could provide value if you could bring your customers some ideas, give a little bit of thought ahead of time into what their challenges are and how you can help them, not just with your product, but with some ideas that are going to help them get through to the next stage, which everybody on the planet is dealing with, Jeff.
Yeah. When you and I first spoke, I was not stunned to find that we agree on so much, and value is certainly one of the things I'm passionate about. The example I always give, Fred, is that when I do a live seminar, I'll always ask people, who here drives a really nice car? And there's always a very proud, big ego salesperson who raises their hand, and Mercedes 500 or something like that. And excuse me. My question is always, why'd you spend $90,000 for a car when you could have spent $500 and gotten a 1975 Honda Accord, which runs forever and is a very comfortable car? And they always have great reasons for investing $90,000 more in a car than they needed to. And my point is never that they've wasted the money. God bless them for having it and the good taste to buy that kind of car. But my point is, you saw $90,000 more value in owning a new Mercedes than a used Honda. So I'm with you 1,000,000%. Good morning, Fran down in Texas. Good to see you. Keith Ginsburg says, woohoo, live sales gurus. And Edward Henry says, let's put this up there. He says, developing a USP that meets the customer's expectation based on intelligent discovery. Excellent. Excellent, my friend. In almost every organization that I've ever worked with, and I've worked with tons, and I know you have too, there always seem to be a couple of salespeople, or maybe a handful at the most, who are just killing it. They're just wiping up the floor with everybody else. But the largest portion of each team seem to be struggling. And the last couple of years, you just mentioned, have changed the world for everybody, and certainly for salespeople. So in your professional opinion, what should salespeople be doing right now to achieve greater success?
Yeah. And first off, I want to just acknowledge you for the success you've had in creating the network, and having people chime in with comments is great. And whoever the Facebook person was who knows us both and thinks that we're both gurus, it's thanks, Mom. If that's you, my mom.
That's actually Keith Ginsburg.
Hey, good to see you, Ginsburg. Hey, first of all, sales is hard. It is the hardest job in the company, and it's the most critical job. I worked at a large software company called CompuWare in the late 90s, and we sold enterprise software. And I remember the CEO of the company said, the last person out the door before we close for good is going to be my worst salesperson. So, I'm a huge believer that sales is a noble profession, that sales is a critical profession. And, you have to be successful at sales. I think there's three things. Let's just throw out three things that you need. First of all, you need to be in it for the long run, right? You need to view it as a profession. It's not just, you're going to start on day one and become vice president and make $1 million. Most of the great salespeople, Jeff, that you and I deal with, they've been doing it for a career, and they treat it like a profession, and they understand the product, and they understand the customer, and they understand the profession. Things that you need to do. If you're like showing up in like a t-shirt for a sales call with a CEO or a CIO, right? That person's not going to have a whole lot of credibility with you. Little things like putting on a jacket, putting on a tie, if you're going to be talking to someone who's giving you money. So first of all, treat it like a profession, and that's what you need to do. Second of all, you need to intimately understand, I believe, the customer. You need to intimately understand. And right now it's even more critical because everybody is still distracted with figuring out their own stuff. Maybe if COVID has affected their personal life, it's definitely affected their company at some level. And even now it's affected their company because of things like the Great Resignation, which may be impacting their company, but it's definitely impacting your customer, and it's definitely impacting your customer's customer. A lot of times we think about this, it's like, how do I serve my customer? Well, think about their customer and their customer's customer. If your customer services the movie theater industry, that's a tough one, because it still hasn't quite come back. If your customer services the hospitality industry, right, it still hasn't quite come back. So you got to be aware of the challenges that they're going through. And third, which kind of goes back to my first comment, it's a profession, and it's a long-term thing. A lot of the people that I've seen, that I've interviewed, that work with at the Institute for Excellence in Sales, that are successful, they've been selling enterprise software for 20 years. Right? Or they've been selling financial services for 25, 30 years, and they've sold it to the same type of customer. I'm in DC, right outside of Washington, DC, and our big marketplace here, of course, is the federal government. And I'll be interviewing people who've been at Oracle and IBM for 30 years, selling to the same customer base, and they've grown with their customer. So those three things, treat it like a profession, to really intimately understand your customer, and really becoming good, becoming an athlete, understanding the process, understanding things like showing up on time, things like, being 3 steps ahead of the customer, right? One thing I'm amazed about, and you probably are too, I'm amazed at how people don't even prepare. So many people, they show up for a call and it's like, I'll give you an example. I do a podcast called the Sales Game Changers podcast. I'm looking for sales VPs to interview, and I'm also looking for authors and people like you to have on our shows during the week. So I get an email from a podcast recruiting company that pitches people to be on podcasts. And the email said, your podcast, the Sales Game Changers podcast, is great, Fred. I have a great candidate for you. Would you be interested? His name is, I'm not going to mention the guy's name. He just wrote a great book on sales. And I'm looking at this email and I'm like, he was on my show last week. This guy who I know was on my show literally last week. If you had spent a millisecond of prep, gone to my LinkedIn page, gone to my podcast page, you would have seen that this guy was on the show. So I forwarded the email to the guy and I said, hey, FYI, your podcast recruiting firm is doing a good job for you, but you may want to tell them they should do a millisecond of research. So those are things that salespeople still drop the ball on sometimes and don't do. And it's pathetic, man.
I like so much of what you said there. I'm constantly stunned at how salespeople do not act like professionals that are in a real career. And most never read a sales book, never go to a seminar. There's a million videos for free on YouTube from guys like you and me, just sharing information. Not all of it great, but some of it really, really good, where you can learn and improve. I don't know everything. I still read just about every sales book that comes out because I don't know everything. There's who knows who's come up with something that where I can share that with my audience and they'll all benefit. And I love what you said about it being a noble profession. I am proud to be a salesperson. I don't go, hey, I'm a salesperson, but I have no shame whatsoever because I know that for me, I come from a place of service. My job is to serve people and help them do whatever they're doing now better. And when you do that and truly come from that, instead of having commission breath, I need to earn a commission, then when you truly take care of people, you should be able to sleep well at night. And it is noble. I don't know if you've seen, I just started watching this last night. There's a show on Hulu, Dope Sick. And have you seen it?
No.
It's about the opioid crisis and the Sackler family and the whole thing. And I was already fairly familiar with what had gone on, but it's really a great portrayal of it. And, they're prepping their salespeople to go out and sell this, what's going to be a horrible nightmare drug. And they know it's going to be. And you can see the VP of sales up there rah-rahing them. There's one guy, I'm not going to give away the details, I don't want to spoil it, but there's this one guy you can see from the beginning. He's kind of thinking, I don't know if this is right. And my hunch is, I don't know, because I'm only halfway through it. But my hunch is this guy's going to wake up at some point and go, oh, we're killing people. I got to do something. So yeah, it is a noble profession if you treat it that way.
Hey, Jeff, I just want to give props. There's a woman named Lisa Earl McLeod who actually wrote a book called Selling is a Noble Profession. And, that book has made it through. And basically the premise is, if you have a purpose for sales, right? If you have a purpose on why you're selling, and it's not just, there's nothing wrong with making a lot of money in sales. Let's get that out there on the table. You mentioned that in the very beginning. It is a great profession. If you're successful, you could do tremendous for your family and for your children and for your company and give money back. And a lot of sales professionals give back, because they understand that that's the gift that sales gives us. But at the same time, it's you're doing good. A lot of the great salespeople too, they're active in charities, they're active in philanthropy, they're committed to charities within their customer. Like I mentioned, a lot of the companies that we service sell to the public sector, the federal government. And I'll ask them, why have you devoted your career to selling to the federal government? And they'll say, my dad was in the military and my uncle was in the military, and I've seen what they've done for citizens. Or, I had a health crisis and I saw that, the National Institutes of Health or CDC or whatever had developed, worked with industry to develop the drug which saved my mother's life. And, those types of things kind of really go back to it. If it's just about the money, eventually, to be honest with you, if it's just about the money, I think you're going to eventually burn out. It's going to get hard at some point, like we had in the last 2 years. And if you don't have that value and that mission behind you, it becomes a challenge, I think.
Yeah, I'm with you. My stepfather, who was a career salesperson and really helped shape my early sales career, told me when I was very young, Jeffrey, sales is a great career, and here's why. Every single day you get to wake up, look yourself in the mirror, and give yourself a raise. And then all you have to do is go out and earn it. And that's really stuck with me. And it's true. Every day we have a great opportunity to help people and earn a great living. Good morning, Heidi Felix. I'm assuming this is Bryn Tillman, one of my
The great
favorite
Bryn
people in the
Tillman.
world. She says she loves us both. Let's see. Edward says, develop a management strategy for controlling customer engagement. Need to be accountable to managing tasks and customer deliverables as promised. Today, we need to be all-star sales and project managers. Joe Pontius, happy Friday. And here's somebody who says, we recently hired a company who addressed our biggest concern before we even raised it. It was impressive. Great preparation. It's apparently a common concern. Yes, when we can bring up to the prospect what we believe to be their problem. And by the way, my coaching would be, don't tell them this is your problem. Say, I'm speaking to a lot of people who tell me, is it? Ask a question, because otherwise you come off as arrogant. But yes, when you know what their problem is already and you can help them solve it, you become you really adding value, as opposed to somebody who just needs to get a signature and make some money.
I could just comment on that for a second. And by the way, it's great to see Bryn Tillman's. She's been on my podcast many times, and we actually brought her to speak live at the Institute back in December. To the comment that Valerie just made there, those. You don't have to show them that you're going to give them a cure for cancer, right? The little, even like something, I interviewed a couple CIOs on my Sales Game Changers podcast a couple of months ago. And I said, what is the value you're looking for? And they said, you know what? We know all about the products. We have an IT organization that knows about the products, but tell me how to work better with your company, right? Or make an introduction. That's going to be really helpful to me, to another CIO who maybe has done something similar. Or, I was stunned at what the CIO said, that it's little things can really make a huge difference. You don't need to give me the strategy of, your data collection software for the next 10 years. He goes, my IT guys are in charge of that. They'll let us know what we need to do. But, even like a little thing, like, we talk about like an article or something, not something that's, just kind of like fake to make the intro, but even like a little tidbit can help you stay in the mind of the customer.
Well, I think Bryn would agree, who clearly we both agree is a true expert. Add value, give something to people where they feel like you're doing something for them, not just with the hope of closing a deal, but something that truly adds value. Like you said, an introduction to somebody else. Look, I have a wide network of really talented people that I can recommend, and I'm constantly hooking up people that there's no way it's going to serve me necessarily, but we all know that when you make that kind of introduction, people know that you've done something good. And the law of gratitude or the law of reciprocity says that when you do something nice for people, they tend to want to do something nice for you too. What, in your opinion, what are the elite salespeople doing right now that other people aren't?
Yeah, well, it goes to some things we had discussed. I mean, they treat it as a profession. The other thing too is they're providing the value to the customer. And we've learned a couple of things recently. We spent a couple episodes at the Sales Game Changers podcast talking about, the Great Resignation. Is this real? And we were doing a lot of focus on, hey, Mr. VP or Ms. VP of sales, here's some things your company can do to show that you're a better employer for salespeople. And one of the VPs who was on our one of the episodes that we had done, she said, the challenge isn't necessarily you solving the Great Resignation. It's the fact that your customer's customer and your customer's customer's customer are struggling with the Great Resignation, which is a down chain, type of a thing. So the elite sales professionals, they're thinking of the entire ecosystem, not just what can I offer my customer today to help me get to my quota that we sell, but they're offering that value of, hey, I noticed something that's happening to your customer's industry. And, here's some things that we did with another customer. So they're thinking of the ecosystem. And I just want to go back to something that you mentioned before, just in the last comment. Yeah, an introduction may not lead to a great sale for us tomorrow, but maybe it does 2 years from now, maybe 3 years from now. Somebody will come back, and I get this all the time, and you probably do, Jeff, with your network. Someone says, do you remember when you introduced? Actually, matter of fact, yesterday, I did my podcast with a couple of recruiters, and we talked about, what it means for hiring managers. What are they looking for today, and how could they be even more effective? And on the call, he said, Fred, do you remember when you introduced me to, he mentioned somebody. And I was like, that was like 3-4 years ago. He goes, yeah, that became a customer. He became a client. And, that's, I've always appreciated that. I didn't remember, I didn't know. Then I began to recall. So it's that two things, Jeff. I would say one, it's understanding the entire ecosystem, not just what you offer from point A to point B, but what's the entire ecosystem of your customer, your customer. And then two, it's looking at it as, like we've mentioned so many times, it's a profession. And as a professional, you do the little things, right? You just don't show up for the sales call. And you take off for the week and then you just show up for the sales call. You're doing, like you just said, you're reading, you're talking, you're asking for help, talking to your boss and say, hey, what do you think about this approach with this customer? A lot of times we talked about value before, and I'll ask the VPs who I interview, I say, tell us some specific things that you guys are doing to prep for your customer calls. It's easy to say you got to prepare. We talked about that a couple of times. I'll say, tell me exactly what are some things that you're doing with your sales team to prep for calls. And, you'll hear things like, well, we're doing like 1 hour brainstorming sessions every Tuesday morning, just open brainstorming, or I have an open door, or whatever it might be, or we bring a customer on every week, little things like that, just to get better, at the professional sales.
Yeah, and it often is the little things that you have no clue. One of my favorite sayings is, "You never know. You never know what's going to happen," and it really can be the little things. Last night, when I'm done with work, I like to sit around and watch TV and just hang out and mellow out. But last night, a client of mine was holding a networking event at their showroom. And I decided, you know what, even though I've had a long day, I'm going to get in my car and just drive over, see if I can help them in any way. Maybe I can watch the salespeople interacting with the customers and, give them some advice later on. So I did get in my car and drove, and it was a fantastic event, really well run. And I just happened to run into somebody, and I'm chatting with this person, and he said, "What are you doing?" When I told him what I did, he goes, "Oh my God, I need you." So you never know when that little thing that you're doing is going to turn into something good for you. I certainly didn't go there with any intention of this being good for me, but you just don't know. There's that little ripple effect constantly. How about women in selling? Are there any particular challenges that you feel women face in sales today?
So we run a women in sales program, and it's the thing that I'm most proud of. And it's not Fred Diamond's Women in Sales program. It's the Institute for Excellence in Sales Women in Sales program. I have a partner. Her name is Gina Sircusi, and she's amazing. And we do something called the Women in Sales Leadership Forum. It's a 6-session cohort over 2.5 months. We have women in sales leadership around the globe. And it goes on, like I said, it's a virtual program right now for 2.5 hours, 6 times over 2 months. And here's the thing, which amazed me. When we created the Women in Sales program, what happened was there's a business owner not too far from here who had a $1 billion company, still does. Actually, it's like 5 billion now. And he said to me, he said, Fred, he goes, here's my biggest challenge. This was about 6 years ago, Jeff. He said, half my sales team is men, half my sales team is women. He said, the women perform 5 to 9% better than the men on average. He said, the problem is when we have team meetings or when we have brainstorming sessions, the women shut down. He said, the men will jump in. And this is a traditional common thing. If we're to say to, 3 men, it's like, okay, what should we do about this problem? We'll just start shooting at ideas. I do this too. I'll say 3 things we should do. And then I'm thinking of the 3 things, as I'm talking, right? And that's a guy thing. The women will ponder, okay, what might be the issue here? So meanwhile, if you have men and women together, the men will just jump in. And I've heard this time and time again on our Women in Sales show that we do every Tuesday. The challenge right now, and this is a big problem, not just in the sales industry, but in so many industries, the wife, the mother has been impacted more by the pandemic, to be honest with you, than the men in the family in most cases. The woman has had to be the homeschooler, it's had to be the camp counselor, it's had to take care of all the things. And women between the ages of, let's say, 35 to 55 have been in the professional world, have really been hit hard by the challenges of the pandemic and what it's caused. So what we're providing in our Women in Sales program is support. More and more, we're seeing organizations arise that are helping women support. I'll tell you one quick story. When we started our Women in Sales program, it's about 3 years ago, right before the pandemic, we started it. And I had some women in our Institute for Excellence in Sales world who said, they're not women in sales, they're sales. They're salespeople. We're all salespeople. They have to deal with the same thing. They have to deal with getting quota attainment and, dealing with objections and all those things. So we got about 20 women signing up for our first session that we had done. And I brought 2 of these women in as coaches. And they both said to me afterwards, we were wrong. They said, we need to build this support network. We want to be part of this support network. And it's, it's interesting. It's not complaint. It's about, how do we solve these problems? Same way we talked before, how do the elite sales professionals, become elite? They have a network, they ask for help. One of the most rewarding things that we've done is create this program for women in sales around the globe to build this trusted network that they can rely upon each other and help each other during interesting times.
Fascinating. One of the challenges I see at almost every organization that I work with and every private coaching client that I work with is they simply are not prospecting enough, or they're not prospecting effectively. Any ideas or tips for what the people should be doing today to bring on more prospects?
Yeah, that's great. Prospecting is always hard. I mean, it goes back to the whole notion that we started the conversation, Jeff, is that, sales is hard. There's so many elements of the sales process that's hard. You know, One thing that we like to tell people to be more effective with in prospecting is to have pride in what you're bringing to the marketplace. And a lot of times we don't see that. We see where sales professionals don't really understand the value of what they're bringing. And it's not just my company is great. It's like, what's the value that your offering is going to provide prospects, that's going to provide customers. So then the conversations become more crisp and more effective. And by asking the right questions, you could then figure out, how do we provide more value along the way to help you solve your problems? If people view, as a matter of fact, the podcast I'm going to be doing in about 35 minutes is on cold calling, right? People hate cold calling. Even the most loved, the sales professionals who love cold calling, hate cold calling. Nobody wants to be rejected. Right. But you have to figure out how to be present, how to be in the moment, how to understand that you provide so much value that, okay, this person isn't that interested. Good. Let's move on to the next, one of the great guests I've ever had is a guy named Alan Stein Jr., who's an elite basketball coach. And he would tell stories about the next play. The Tom Brady's of the world, the Joe Montanas, the Kobe Bryant, they don't linger in the negative that happened. They're on to the next play. So in prospecting, the same thing. Next play, next play, next play. And it's not really, I hate when people say it's a numbers game. It's a numbers game to the right prospects. If you're calling 50 of the wrong prospects all day, yeah, you're eventually going to get downtrodden because you're not talking to the right people. I'd rather you spoke to 10 good ones, and hone your message and do the preparation, do the research. So you're engaging in a real conversation, not a conversation that's trying to get someone to do something they have no interest in doing.
Yep. Well, I'm going to have to tune into that because I love hearing about cold calling. And if you haven't already met him, I'm happy to introduce you to a guy who I think is just brilliant. His name is Jason Bay. Are you familiar with Jason?
No, I'm not.
Fantastic. I'm going to make that introduction. He's actually been a guest here on the Sales Pro Network. Just fantastic. Teaches permission-based prospecting. Really thoughtful guy. Just terrific. I'll make that introduction for you.
Thanks.
We're quickly running out of time because I know you've got to get ready for your podcast. Any tips for virtual selling? So many of us are selling via Zoom these days. Any tips for that?
Yeah. You got to treat, there's a whole bunch of things. We have a good friend at the Institute. Her name is Julie Hansen. Do you know Julie at all? Have you come across her? You may want to talk to her. She just came out with a book called Look Me in the Eye. It's about technique. She's an actress. A lot of her career was in acting, and she understands how to look into the camera and how to be expressive and all those types of things. It goes back to a lot we talked about. You got to take it seriously. How many times, even today, we're doing today's show in February of 2022, do people show up late for a Zoom call? If the call's at 1:00, right? Show up at 5:01 and wait. If you're not the one who turns on the Zoom, get on there at 5:01. Be prepared, be ready, understand, there's different technologies. There's Zoom, there's Meets, there's Teams, Google Meets, there's Teams. I use GoToWebinar, GoToMeeting for a lot of our things. So sometimes, you still see people like, Bill, you're on mute, Bill, it's like,
and then it's been 2 years of you're on mute. Come on already. Figure out where that button is.
Figure out where that button is. But the number one thing I would say is just, it's still a singular opportunity in most cases to interact with the customer, right? So it's still a singular opportunity every time. Sales is really about getting to the next conversation, right? I had a guest on my show. Do you know James Muir? He wrote The Perfect Close.
I know the name. I have never met him.
Yeah, he wrote a book called The Perfect Close. I had him on my show. God, it was probably about a year ago. And before I read his book, I thought it was about the close, like the moment. And his book is basically about getting to the next step, right? It's like, a sale may take 40 interactions, right? So how do we, as sales professionals, tee ourselves up to get to the next stage, whatever it might be? Same thing with the virtual sale. It's like, I need to get to the next stage. So if I have an opportunity to speak with you, I want to make sure, even simple things like I was on the phone yesterday and there was a dog that was cute 19 months ago, right? All right, well, you know what? Take care of your dog, you know, and the same thing with your kids. It was cute when we got to see each other's kids and, see pictures and things in the background and stuff. And, that was one of the joys of the first 6 months of the pandemic, right? Okay, now take care of the kids because you're a professional and you wouldn't bring a baby to a sales call at someone's office. So we love your kids, but same thing. It's like, it's step 3 in 42. Hopefully you better take it seriously.
Yeah, I love what you said about showing up early. I mean, how often have we, tried to log on to something, and now there's a computer glitch, and you might need to reboot, and that takes a while. So show up a little early, have good lighting, make sure your microphone's working. It's simple little things like that. Make sure you're centered in the frame. There's some very simple stuff that people just aren't doing, and I think it's crazy. Let's see. We only have time for one more question because I know you've got to go.
Yeah, we got a couple minutes. We're good.
Let's go with, how about this? What are your thoughts on asking for referrals?
Oh, always. It's interesting. We did a show, and it's controversial with some point. Some people believe that you need to earn the right to ask for a referral, which is true. I just can't say to you, Jeff, right now, it's like, hey, can you give me 10 sales VPs, for me to call? I mean, we have a relationship, so I probably could, but if I just met you for the very first time, I met you on LinkedIn and we connected and we have a Zoom call coming up and, it's like, gee, Jeff, I really would like you to give me 10 sales VP referrals right now. You'd be like, sure. Okay. Absolutely. And I never hear from you again. Right. So you need to earn the right. But here's the thing with sales. It's like, sometimes we make it too hard. In most cases, we make it too hard, which goes back to your question about prospecting. One reason why people are not great at prospecting is because they make it too hard. They put too much emphasis on the wrong things, on making sure that I get the message across to you that I have scripted or that, we've been told to talk about right now to our customers. As far as referrals, the same thing. It's like, you got to get to that level of trust, but a great introduction from someone that you trust, is gold. You better be asking for those things. And if you're going to give referrals, I'm a big referral giver, but I want to make sure that I'm going to be respectful. So if someone says to me, Fred, I saw you're on a call with Jeff Goldberg, I really would like to be introduced to him. I want to make sure before I utilize half an hour of your time, Jeff Goldberg, that it's the right type of introduction. So, half the time I'll say, well, I'm not sure Jeff is really the right guy for you to talk to right now. But, let me give it a little bit of thought. And a lot of times I'll even ask, I'll say, hey, Jeff Goldberg, my friend, whomever would like to meet with you. Could you check out his LinkedIn or her LinkedIn and let me know if you're okay with the referral? You have those, I've never used the term all that frequently, but the relationship bank, right? So it's like a bad referral, that person may be gone forever. So you got to be respectful on the person you're referring to.
Yeah, I'm with you. I've had this argument, we'll call it a discussion with my coach. She's not a sales coach. She's what she calls a transformational coach. And she's incredible. One of the most amazing human beings I know. And we talked about this one time and she goes, I would never, ever ask for a referral. Ever. It's rude. It's bad manners. I wouldn't do it. And here's the thing, Jeff, if you're incredibly good at what you do, the referrals are going to come. And in her her case, she's not wrong because she's never once asked me for a referral. And I've referred her all over the planet because she's so great at what she does. But for most of us, I think we do have to ask. One of the things I love, and you started talking about it before, closing, that it's all about the close. I love when I get a call. Can you come train my people how to close? And my answer is always the same. I'll be happy to teach your people how to close. What are we going to do with the other 7 hours and 55 minutes of the day? Because that's a 5-minute conversation. What your people really need to do is to learn how to sell. And Fred, you've certainly given us a lot of great information today. And I know you've got to run before we do. Could you please tell people, and I'm going to share my screen now. Could you tell people how they can get in touch with you if they're interested in speaking with you?
Sure. That's a great picture, by the way. Yeah, just find me on LinkedIn. That's the best way, go to LinkedIn, Fred Diamond. There's my email, fdiamond@i4espd.org. And I'd love to LinkedIn, especially to anybody who's listening to this show today. I guarantee you're the kind of person that I would love to be linked into. And I really appreciate this, Jeff. I think you're doing great work. We've gotten to know each other over the last couple of months, and we have some things, some personal things that we're both interested in, which is great. But, the fact that you've brought together this network that obviously is paying attention to you and looking for some guidance and for some advice, like I said in the beginning, the sales profession, it's the hardest job in the company. Really is. It's the most important job in the company. That's why we're the Institute for Excellence in Sales. We're not the Institute for Excellence in Sales and anything else. Not that every other job isn't important, but we believe that it's a noble profession. We believe that it really is a profession, and there's so many skills that need to be learned for you to be successful, and the better you get at sales, the happier you'll be, the happier your family will be, happier your company will be. And you know what? If you have that mission-driven, noble purpose, you're making the world a better place.
And where can people find the Sales Game Changer podcast?
They can go to Apple is the best place. Sales Game Changers podcast. We also have a website, salesgamechangerspodcast.com. We do 4 shows a week. Friday in about 20 minutes, I'm going to be doing a show, our creativity in sales on prospecting with the great Nancy Calabrese. And, it's my favorite hour of the day. This is actually going to be my favorite half hour of today. But I appreciate the conversation. It was a lot of fun. And once again, you're doing great work, man.
Thank you so much, Fred. I really appreciate our relationship and for you sharing generously with with our audience today. And I'll end as I always do. Please remember, gang, sales is a game of making things happen. So get out there and make sales happen. Have a great show, Fred. Have a great weekend, everybody. See you soon.
Thanks.